Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. So my talk today is called Using FOSS, or Free and Open Source Software, Just Do It. And of course, in this case, when we say it, we're talking about information technology. I would like to dedicate this talk to Rear Admiral Grace Murray Hopper, who was one of the first programmers that we had in computer science. She was a woman that in the 1950s managed to become a Rear Admiral of the United States Navy. And what Rear Admiral Hopper used to say a lot was that it is easier to ask forgiveness than to ask permission. And so it is easier just to go ahead and do what you think is right, and then ask forgiveness later on if somebody disagrees with you. I went to Istanbul in 1997. I had been using Linux for about 3 years at this point, and I was very enthusiastic about it. And I said to the people in Istanbul, "Why aren't you using more Linux?" And they said, "We are waiting for the letter of authorization." I said, "What are you talking about? What letter of authorization?" They said, "Well, if you've been working with Microsoft, you would say, I have a company, and Microsoft, I'd like to use your software," and then you would have lawyers talking to each other, and you would have business managers talking to each other, and you'd have negotiations, and eventually you would get this letter that says that you are the representative of Microsoft in Turkey. And that would be the letter of authorization. And we are waiting for the letter of authorization to come from Linux. I said I have good news and bad news. The bad news, I'll tell you first. You will never get the letter of authorization because there is nobody who can give it to you. Not even Linus Torvalds can give you the letter of authorization. The good news is you don't need it. You can just go ahead and use the Linux operating system and free software. As long as you want, you can do anything you want to with it. But you have to obey the rules of the license. So if you read the license and you obey those rules, go ahead and use it. You do not need a letter of authorization. And the next year when I went back to Istanbul, there were many companies that were using free software. I then went on to Delhi a week later, and I looked around and I said, "Why aren't there more companies using Linux here?" And they said, "We're waiting for the letter of authorization." Oy! Let me tell you what computing was like in 1969 when I started programming. Computers would fill this room with vacuum tubes and wires. They would weigh many multiple tons. They would execute instructions at perhaps 100,000 instructions a second. And their memories would be tiny, tiny, tiny compared to the memories of computers today. And these computers would cost many millions of US dollars to make. And that was when $1 million was a lot of money. But today, we have computers like the Raspberry Pi, tiny little computers that have great capacity, and they only cost 35 US dollars. This computer, which can fit in your hand, has the capability of doing anything that those mainframes of many years ago could do, and more. And yet, it can fit in your hand. And you can afford to give these to your students and let them understand how computers really work so that they can learn and be the computer scientists of tomorrow. Software in 1969 was different than the software that most of you know. There was very, very few software programs that were distributed in binary-only code, the ones and zeros that Microsoft distributes. In those days, software was distributed in the source code, the languages that people can understand because it's written like we write language. And as a person who bought software and used software in those days, I could change the software to meet my needs. But then in the period of 1977 to 1980, microcomputers started to come out and be manufactured in large numbers. And people said, we can manufacture software the same way that we manufacture hardware. Stamp it out like cookies on a cookie sheet. But this was when a lot of the people using software spoke one of the 5 major languages of the world. And these people did business the same way that Western-style people did business. They weren't diversified as we are in the world today. And we need to have software that can be just as diversified as we are. Today, we want to have software that gives us freedom. And we need the software written to do a particular job. Nobody buys a piece of software and puts it up on the wall and shines a light on it like a picture. You use software to do a job. Software is a tool, and you should be able to pick the tools that you need and be able to modify the tools so that you can do your job better. This is why we need free software. And a lot of people don't understand the word freedom, particularly George W. Bush. He had a hard time understanding that word. So a lot of times I talk about slavery instead, because unfortunately people understand slavery a lot better than they understand the word freedom. When you're a slave, you don't have control over what you do. You have a master who tells you where to go and what to do, when to have a child, when to get married. You are a slave. When you are free, you go where you want to. You do what you want to. You have control over your life. And when you have software freedom, you have control over your software. To a business person, they need to have control over their business. They need to know when the software will be done so they can make their business work the way they want to. So I do not talk to business people about business freedom anymore. I talk to them about business control, because business people understand the word control. And we write this software because we want to help people along the way. A lot of people have written software before us, and we utilize the software that they have written. As we change the software to meet our needs, we give it back to the software community so they too can use it for other people. If you don't know what software freedom means, when you're trying to explain free software to other people, try using the word control. They may have a much better idea. Now, these are some people I have met in the past who have learned about taking control of their software. The person in the upper right-hand corner, his name is Eric Troen, and he is one of the 3 people who started the company Red Hat Software. He was a college student when he started the company, and today he is a multi-millionaire. The person in the black and white photo at the upper center, his name is Mark Spencer. Mark, at the age of 19, wanted to start a company that provided support for software. But he needed a very special piece of telephone equipment called a PBX, a private branch exchange. It's a little bit like a switchboard. And this piece of equipment was very closed and very proprietary and very expensive. It would cost between 20 and 30,000 US dollars for him to buy the system he needed. So he decided to write his own piece of software and put it on an inexpensive PC that did exactly the same thing. He decided to make this an open source project so that other people could help him do this. That piece of code is called Asterisk. And today, it allows a company called Digium, that Mark owns, to employ 350 people and thousands more around the world installing this software and making a living off of using this software. And they do not have to ask Mark's permission to do this. They pull the software down, they install it for their customer, they help to tune it for their customer, and they make money doing this. I'd like to talk about just one more, and that is the person in the bottom center. He lives in Soweto, South Africa. And in Soweto, it's a very, very poor city just outside of Johannesburg. During apartheid, this is where the riots of apartheid started. And after apartheid, the city began to turn around and people began to build businesses. But the government did not think that there was anybody in the city of Soweto that knew anything about computers or knew anything about free software, because after all, these people were just poor black people who didn't know anything. And I went there and I said, you know, I believe that even here in Soweto, there are people who know about free software. And the government laughed at me. But after I left, they went back to Soweto and they held a meeting about free software. And 350 people showed up to the meeting. And they found out that that guy was running a consulting company out of his house using dial-up networking and was talking with the creator of the Linux kernel, trying to fix a problem in the operating system. And the government was so impressed by this that they opened up an open source development center in Soweto. Here are some of my newest heroes. These people are from a developing country called Colombia in Latin America. They are high school students working with some of those inexpensive computers I showed you, and of course, free software. They are building home automation systems and water purification systems and other types of systems using free software and these inexpensive computers. And these systems will then be given over to companies to manufacture real products, which will then be sold and manufactured in these countries. They will be building an industry inside of their country and employing people inside of their country. They'll be learning about how software is built inside of their country. They will not be sending a lot of money to Redmond, Washington, or to Silicon Valley. They will not be seeing their finest students leaving their country looking for a good job, because they will see that their students can get a good job inside of their country. Every time you send $1 outside of Sudan, it's the same thing as keeping $10 inside of Sudan. Because when you pay a local programmer inside of Sudan to write local software, that person then takes that money and buys local food, local housing, and pays local taxes. But when that money leaves Sudan, When that money leaves Sudan, I guarantee you there's only so much of whatever else Sudan makes that Bill Gates is going to eat. You need to develop your technology here and utilize free software. Utilize the software that people have been writing for the last 40 years. Utilize that software to escalate your software industry. Please do it. We want you to do it. Here are two more. One more person from Colombia developing free software for home automation. The government has given him funds. He is 17 years old. The government has given him funds to start his own company developing this home automation. Just do it. If you go out to SourceForge, if you go out to a place called SourceForge on the net, you'll find out that there are 324,000 different programs out there written by 3.4 million programmers that is all free for you to take and improve and change and make it do what you want to do. And what types of programs are these? Database programs, programs for running your businesses, scientific and engineering programs, programs to help the manufacturing in your country, programs for doing multimedia, programs for doing telephony, operating systems of all types. It's there for you to take. Please take them. Where do you start? Start by training universities to use free software in teaching their students. It's okay if they also teach them how to use Microsoft Office, but they should be teaching them how to use Office products. Microsoft Office is one of them. Get your companies to start using FOSS for new projects. Develop local expertise in developing software and create jobs inside of Sudan. And then this will help to attract other businesses to Sudan, which will generate even more jobs. You don't have to be certified in this. You can self-learn this. You don't have to have other people teach you. Go out to the internet, the information is there, just do it. Mad Dog, this will take a long time. Well, if you had started 10 years ago, you'd be there today. If you don't start today, in 10 years you won't be there. Start today. Thank you.